So welcome, Lisa Schermerhorn.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you doing this interview and being part of Find Your Mentor. I just love what you're doing and the whole prospect of being part of this organization. I'm really excited about what you're doing. I think it's amazing.
Thank you very, very much. It's a wonderful way to start. I'm honored myself, and I'm specifically excited about all of the people that I'm meeting on this journey, and it's very humbling for me. And um, I think how I was thinking of starting off with this video is really the notion that I wouldn't be who I am today, where I am today, being able to do what I can do without people, mentors, important people that came into my life and were able to guide me through difficulties and get obstacles out of the way and understand, just get a better understanding of who I am, and in that way enabling me to activate. And I am just on the beginning of my journey. So, and you're one of those wonderful mentor people who help other people and me.
Well, thank you. And you just struck a chord when you just said that about mentors. And I think about all the mentors that I've had in my life and how I wouldn't be where I am today without them either. And it was interesting because as a child growing up, as a little girl, I had learning disabilities that went undiagnosed. So as a little girl, I remember being in kindergarten and everyone was reading and writing and doing their math, and I was lost. I was also one of the youngest in my class, so everyone had a year on me, and at that age, that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
That started a cascade of going to summer school every summer of my childhood, really getting mediocre to poor grades and struggling. And I developed this belief that I was not smart, that I was stupid.
Wow.
And because of that, I didn't really try in school either because I didn't think I had the capacity to learn or anything to offer. And as I got older, there would be classes here and there that I would find interesting and maybe do well here and there. But for the most part, it was really hard on me. I had very low self-esteem. I did make it to college, and I met my ex-husband when I was in college, and I just decided I'll just get a job because I don't have anything special to offer where everyone else has all these great gifts.
Mm.
And I poured myself into being a mom, and I worked in the garment center in New York City, and I worked for a airplane engine component company. I did all the FAA, which is crazy because you have to be smart for that, but I didn't think I was good. FAA
Wow.
approvals, working in but it was just my own deep-seated programmed belief. And I remember I was in my mid-late 30s, and I had a breakdown. I had no idea who I was. I was lost. I didn't understand my purpose. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I really had a full-blown nervous breakdown. And I was suicidal. And I was going to therapy 2 to 3 times a week, and no one was helping me. No one. And finally, someone said to me, Lisa, have you thought about a hypnotist? And I was like, a hypno what? It's like, don't they make you quack like a duck? Who does that?
Yeah.
I had no idea. And what happened was I went to see this woman, Karen, and Karen just started creating these shifts in my life that were extraordinary. And she was doing them so quickly. And I thought, my God, there's other people who are in the same position I was, because I also had a lot of people pushing me to take antidepressants. And I am not here to badmouth the mental health profession. I'm not here to talk about medication. I just knew for me, I didn't want to take anything because I knew that I wanted to get to the root cause and heal it. And I was afraid if I took anything that it would just prevent me or take me longer to get to access my depression and why I was depressed. So I continued. Once I did some work with her, I was like, do you teach? And she said yes. And she had just finished being certified by a woman named Doreen Virtue. So any
A
people
nice name.
who no, Doreen Virtue really brought Angel Messenger out there. She was out in California and she was channeling angels and ascended masters. And so she wrote this book about the ascended masters and what each one had to say. So we would meet every week and we would have to read about 7 of them, pick one, and then pray and ask with that particular ascended master. And we would come back and talk about messages that we got and all these miracles that were happening in our lives. And my life began to change. And I grew up Jewish, so I didn't have a relationship with Jesus. I didn't know anything about him. So I chose to work with him one day, and I asked for a sign. He was with me. I had a brand new deck of angel cards, and I took the plastic off the wrapper off, and I looked at all of them, and there were these beautiful illustrations of angels. And I closed them up, asked for a sign that Jesus was with me. And when I opened the deck of cards again, there was this one card that was white with red around the border and black writing, and it said God on it. I still have the deck there in the other room, but it's a constant reminder to me. And then I've had lots and lots and lots of miracle synchronicities. I started to realize that I had this ability to tap into and get these messages and get information knowing that I was on the right track. And I thought, well, I think everyone can do that. They just have to get rid of all these negative belief systems, because we have the ability to tap in directly. We don't need to go through anyone. So I wanted to study everything she did. So she was a hypnotist. She had studied NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. She had studied mediumship. So I went to all her teachers. And all I wanted to do was be like her. And then when I realized that I finished, and I said, I can't be her. I have to figure out who I am. So I went on this journey of working with all these different people. And each one of those, like Karen was a huge mentor for me. And then I went to study with another woman, Pat, who was a hypnotist, but she also channeled angels. And she gave me a message that my spirit guide was next to me. And I'm like, a spirit, what? I was like, and she's like, oh yeah, he's a tall Native American with high cheekbones. And he has a message. He wants you to read this book. And she didn't tell me the name. And she just said, let me go find it. And she couldn't find it anywhere in the room. And the room was dark. She left the room and then came and couldn't. And while she was gone, a book illuminated in a bookcase across the room. I got up and walked across the room and pulled a book off the bookshelf. She came in and said, oh yeah, that's the book. And it was called Soul Retrieval by Sandra Ingerman. I read that book and I thought, that's nice. Who does that? You know, these are like, I'm not an indigenous. I'm like this Jewish girl from New Jersey. What am I going to do with that? So I gave her the book back, and I just didn't know, I just let it go. Well, I was in my mediumship class, and a woman was sitting across from me and said, Lisa, I can't explain it, but I was at this holistic health event, and there was a shaman there, and she's looking for an apprentice, and something made me think of you. Here's her card.
Wow.
And I went to meet.
Synchronicities.
I know. And this is how my life has been. So I went to see this other woman, Karen, and she said to me, we met in person. And she said to me, I want you to go buy a rosemary plant, and I want you to meditate with it for an hour and tell me what it says.
Wow.
Again, this is like, okay, my family, like I'm going to be talking to plants. This was so weird to me.
So, yeah, like the plant is a mentor, right?
Yes. So I sat with the plant and I closed my eyes and I meditated for an hour and I wrote whatever came to mind. And Karen said to me, yep, I'll work with you. So I studied with her for 3 years. And then she moved, and then I found a fellow who taught energy medicine, and I studied energy medicine. So each person that has come to my life has built a richness that has, I learned all about the energy system and your chakras and how they work. We spent 3 years each weekend intensively on each chakra and then building on each one. So my life I got led to all of these mentors. I will tell you, I didn't choose any of these people. They came to me, and all through synchronicities. So I have learned how to surrender and allowed these people and circumstances to come to me. And I went on to then another bunch of stories where I ended up studying a West African form of shamanism, and spent time in Peru and did apprenticeships. So it just has developed. And then what's been interesting is I also love business. And I thought to myself, there are people who don't know any of this. It's new, like it was for me when I first started. And I thought about how much my life has changed since I opened up to all of the spirituality and finding out about all these different realms. And I thought, there are people who are open to this work, who can do mindset work, getting to the root cause of their issue, but also talking about business to help people find their purpose and their why, as well as shifting them in a metaphysical way. So I walk these two worlds, and I found that it's been really, really powerful. So I'm not for everyone, but I'm for the people who really want to step into their own magic, their own power, and get to know themselves a lot more. Does this all make sense?
Yes, I like how can we be beings, like human beings on earth, and spiritual, and not actually address both? You can't address one because you're missing the other. It's impossible. Same way you can't be only focused on enlightenment, right?
Right.
Ascension and everything, and you forget to ground yourself. How do you ground yourself? How do you incorporate as all of these beautiful manifestations, energies, and this potential that can come through you, that you can channel without having a vehicle that you fully understand and is connected to earth, which is what, right? There's that connection from as above, so below. But if below doesn't function, or if above doesn't function, like only half the machine works, right?
So you're so right. And this is why, I've had people say to me, Lisa, you're very gentle about your approach. You don't hit people over the head. You meet people where they're at. Because I will say, the work that I'm doing now is nothing like what I did when I first started, because I hadn't done enough work to be able to do what I do now. So I meet people where they're at. I'll only take them as far as they're willing to go. If they want me to help them go to the next level, again, I don't sprinkle magic fairy dust on people. What I do is I say, people will come to me and say, I'm having this issue. And I'm like a detective. And so I'm looking for, what is the root cause of this? Is this something that happened in this lifetime? And then what I do is I take people through their timeline, through their life, and ask their higher self, because their higher self always knows everything, to go to the root cause of their issue. Now, maybe it happened to them, something that happened at 2 years old or 6 years old, or a sequence of events that have happened over and over again. We release them, replace it with what they wish they could have had instead, because you can't change what happened, but you can change the way you feel about it, right?
They can
And
change the past, actually, right?
yes, in certain ways. Well,
The
what I
past.
do,
Mhm.
yeah. So there's a lot of confusion about time and how time works, because when you're actually healing an emotion or how you think about it, you are actually changing time, right?
the question is like, how does time exist? And I keep on coming back to only through my memory or other memories, like memories of other people, if that wasn't there, or proof of something on a rock. But then how do you, again, only the memory or the documentation of what happened
Right.
is proof that that rock has a cut there because of what happened. But you actually, if there was no documentation, so it's so interesting listening to people who lost their memory, how they're able to reset their lives, baggage gone. Interesting
Yeah.
things, really fascinating. Anyways, I don't want to.
I could go down that conversation so easily with you. Well, there's something else that you can talk about in NLP and in hypnosis is future memories. Because when you set an intention of a goal, you're actually creating something. And now you have a timeline to get there. Because when you imagine something, it now exists in time and space. We actually have unlimited amounts of timelines because every 4 seconds we can make another choice, right?
Amazing.
Because that's a free will. So think about how different your life would have been if you made a different choice 10 years ago.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, so we stumble upon these things because, let's say there was a moment in time, like what you described with your late 30s, where you're like, okay, things just start to crumble because they're not sustainable anymore.
Right.
I'm just imagining what would have happened if we would have been able to start off life like that. Like so the responsibility, I also see, or the joy in my purpose in helping people come together and realize and educate each other through the concept of learning and teaching is, what if we could create some kind of shift or contribute to this shift so that the next generations actually have that understanding of, if they like with our understanding now, if we would start over with having children, you've already had children, I have, but if I could if I could go back and I could redo that process, I would do it differently, even though I'm so glad about my child. But I like, and if we could influence more people, there's so many people waking up, but the next generation, so let's say your children, my child, when they have children, and when they have children, how different it will be from us today. How amazing that is if we can contribute to that positively to that. Yeah.
If I could be a mother now and start over again with the wisdom I have, I would have been a very different parent, very different. I wouldn't have worried as much. I would have allowed, honestly, I would have allowed my kids to express themselves a little more. My son, always pushed the limits, and he always made me a nervous wreck. But he was one of my teachers, and I look at them that way. But here's something to think about that's really interesting. I had a client who came from a perfect childhood. He didn't have to deal with a lot of adversity, and his parents sheltered him, and he lived in this kind of Mayberry-esque, just this perfect kind of, childhood. He got to college and he had no skill set to function in the world. He didn't know how to deal with mean people. He didn't know how to deal with liars. He didn't know how to deal with people who he had never come across. He became anorexic. Yeah. He looked like a Holocaust victim because he had no self-esteem. He had no defense mechanisms. So in some ways, and I think about all the lessons that I've had, because I would never go to someone unless they've experienced what I have and overcome it. Someone who just sits and talks about it, I want someone who's lived it. I want someone who's experienced it.
I think we've just touched on a really important topic, and I need to pull up this image, because I shared this with somebody recently and it made me think so hard, but I couldn't follow through with the thought because I'm like, I need somebody very intelligent to help me process this. Okay, so here it is. May I just read this?
Of course.
Okay, so I don't know who it's from, but it was posted by some sheikh, some Arab. some Arab person. So they asked the founder of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, about the future of his country. And he said, my grandfather was on a camel. My father was on a camel. I'm in Mercedes. My son is on Land Rover, and my grandson going to be from Land Rover, but my great grandson will be back on a camel. Why is that? Tough times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men, and weak men create tough times. Many won't understand, but you have to raise warriors, not parasites. So this is a very extreme way.
I just got the chills from that. Well, if you think about this, I didn't grow up around a lot of people, but I have friends who grew up with trust funds. Okay. So when you think about people who have had things handed to them, they didn't have to work for them. So they didn't have to work those muscles. It's like going to the gym, the reps that you have to do to build those muscles. So if you don't do those reps and do that work and you expect things to be handed to you, number one, you get very insecure because you don't have the wisdom, you don't have the life experience, you don't have what it takes. And so what happens is they start sucking off the system. They suck off their trust fund or wherever that money comes from. Life is easy, and they don't have purpose or meaning, and so they're lost. And then also, if you think about this, it all becomes about things outside of themselves. That there's no reason to go inward. But if you think about it, people who are bored start doing drugs. People who are bored, who have low self-esteem, need to numb themselves just as much as people who struggle in the world. Everyone says, oh, money is going to be so wonderful and my life will be so much better if I have money. I've seen people who are happy with money and happy without. It has nothing to do with that. It's the internal dialogue that comes from within. And one of the things that I was watching a video, and I can't think of his name right now off the top of my head, but he talked about how we have this gene in us that's a worship gene. We always have to worship people and things outside of us. It's kept us slaves because we are always looking at people and circumstances and things that are better than us. I mean,
and give us permission, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of the work that I do is saying, hey, I have something to offer. You have something to offer. Let's dig that up. You were born. It was like, I thought I had nothing. I didn't understand what my purpose was here. I thought I was worthless. And in doing the work and really digging deep, I realized I had all these skills. I just didn't learn like everyone else did. And so when I finally honored that and saw that my place was different than my mother, my father, my sister, and my brother, who are very traditional in their ways. You go to college, you get a job, you get a house, you have kids, and you should be happy with all of that. That was never enough for me. I always asked those deeper questions and went on a journey. And I thank God for my breakdown now, because it was a gift.
What would you say? This is a very simple question maybe for many, but what would you say is a typical indicator that you should go, like there's something in your system that is, you're not synchronistic, or a lot of people are so numbed down. Like, where do you, what advice would you give? Where could you start off? Because if you don't know what you don't know, or if you don't know what could be wrong or might, like, where do you start?
Well, the first sign is lack of joy.
Right.
And feeling lost. Because as human beings, when you're in alignment with who you are, there's joy no matter what. And one of the things that's been fascinating for me, and I never thought I would ever get to this place, is Buddha talks about being in that place of, neutrality, where you're not attached to anything. And I was like, how can you not be attached? But what I found is the more neutral I become, the more work I have done on myself, the more neutral I become, the less high highs and the low lows that I get, which I used to allow external circumstances to spike me up and plummet me, and then spike me up and plummet me. So what happened was I let go of attachment to a lot of things and circumstances, and that's the surrender that I talk about, where something will happen and I'm like, oh, there I go. I don't know why I'm going here. I just know that I need to follow this. That's not for everyone, but I can teach someone to release the attachment. For instance, Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers was this fantastic comedian, and she was attached to being ageless. So she was so attached to it that it killed her, right? Because she died having plastic surgery.
And
she couldn't.
She looked
Yeah.
awful. So sad.
Yeah. But it became an addiction for her.
Yeah.
And what I say is, what if she released the attachment to that and could allow herself to just be, and then she could be happy on the inside? Because people who are doing this and really pulling back and doing that on a constant basis because they don't feel good about themselves. So the work is, where is the lack of joy? What is it that you would love to be able to, and your purpose is not necessarily your job, but your job can be a means to an end so you can afford your purpose. For instance, someone who is rescues animals, right? You're not going to oftentimes be able to afford, usually it's an outgoing cost. You have to constantly fundraise. So you may find a job that you can do so you can afford to help rescue the dogs. So that's why I say your job is not necessarily your purpose. My purpose, no matter whether I'm being paid for it or not, I can't help doing what I'm doing. It's who I am as a human being. Like it was a joke with my ex-husband who used to say, how many people did you make cry at the cocktail party? Because I would start digging and asking all of these deep questions, and all of a sudden they're like, I've never told anyone this before, but somehow I trust you.
Wow. You're like doing therapy in the middle of a cocktail party. Here we go again.
Yeah, but I just found that I would just intuitively just start, asking those questions, and then we'd get to those answers. And it's something that I just love. And getting back to, I became certified as a why coach.
Yes.
Because when
I have so many questions.
Yeah. And I'm not allowing you to ask me questions. I'm just going all over the place.
It's about, I told you, this is like, I want to be quiet because I want to hear everything about you. I feel like we don't know each other very long yet, but right. The first moment we met in California, which is not long ago, I'm like, there's a lot to learn with and about Lisa.
Oh, you're so sweet. So I was doing a marketing class with someone, and she said, I have this friend who has this why business, who here would like to take a why test and discover your why. And I was like, that would be amazing. So I took this test, and it told me that my why is challenge. Now, challenge means I challenge the status quo, and I think outside the box. Hence, growing up as a kid, I always thought outside the box, and I was always unique and different. And when you're that way, you get bullied. You don't feel like you fit in. And on top of that, I wasn't doing well in school, so I also thought I was stupid. So it was the combination of all of those things. But what I since discovered, that I just learned differently, and that I actually am really smart, and that it's just don't ask me to memorize large amounts of information from the standpoint to turn around and take a standardized test. That's not where it lies. I'm really more about figuring out problems and like the detective and things. And that's where I really like to have fun. So my why is challenge. And then I found out how I do that is help people find a better way. And what I ultimately bring is the ability to make sense out of complicated situations and problems. So when you have your why, your how, and your what, not only does it help you get in alignment to make decisions, is it different? Is it better? And does it make sense?
Yes, and
That's
for like I could even see this being implemented for you as a person, as a family, as a couple, as a company, as a project, right?
oh
Doesn't
yeah,
that apply to everything?
it
As a
does,
country?
because if I know, like in business, if I know the why of the people who I work with, then I can speak their language. Okay, so if I have a coworker whose why is trust, then I know that I'm going to use language with them, that I'm going to say, you can trust me. I've done my research on that. I'm going to use that kind of language. If I have someone else who's a challenge, I'm going to go, we're going to do something different that no one else has ever done. If I have someone who's right way, we're going to talk about structure and working within the lines, because that's where they feel safe. If I have someone else who's simplify, these are people who have the ability to streamline things.
Mhm.
So you use that language. It creates rapport. It's beautiful in sales because you get to know and trust people immediately, because you're using their language. They're like, this person gets me. And you can use it for your branding.
Yes, marketing. I love the topic of marketing and sales when I was working more closely with clients. Now I'm just focused on Find Your Mentor. I'm so glad about it, but I love the work because marketing and sales has become it's become so distorted, and it's not what it should be. It's not as ethical as it should be. But so coming back to the why, does that does the why, like, where does it start? Where does the why start? Is it
It
like, because
starts.
you could go big and you can, right? Then there's us.
Well, for people who are familiar with Simon Sinek, who did his TED talk about the importance of knowing your why, a fellow named Gary Sanchez saw him speak, and he was blown away and went up to Simon and said, I need to find out what my why is. And Simon said, I don't teach people how to figure out their why. I tell them why it's important to know it.
Mhm.
So Gary went off on this 10-year exploration of interviewing people. And through the 10 years, he discovered that there's actually 9 whys. So I guarantee you that for you, one of your whys that's very strong is contribute. And these are people who want to give and be of service to humanity. Now, just because it's not in my top 3 doesn't mean that I'm not contribute. We have all of them. Contribute is actually number 4. There's a sequence that goes all, you go from your most important down. But contribute is a huge part of who you are. And so you want to be of service. And what also in listening to you is you're always looking for a better way, something
Oh
that's
yeah,
better,
optimizing.
optimizing better, making things better.
Yeah. And also
So
challenging. I think challenge is a
I was going to
big.
say challenges in there too. And we'd have to see the order once you took the test, because
Mhm.
the challenging status quo, but challenge is also a challenge to be different. Better way is making something better. So I have challenge where I always want to be different, but it's not always better. And then there's better way of always looking for a better way, something that's different, but also better way. They're visionaries. So better way people are visionaries, and so are challenge people.
Mhm. Well, it's fascinating because I think about the way you look at things, the way I look at things. Then you take like 2 people and you take more than 2 people together.
Right.
And then you're able to, especially working on a company or a project, you're able to highlight from different, you have people are like facets. They can look at things from different angles. And so that's basically also, is there like a test, a why test like for team to understand the
Well, what I
better
do
one?
is I do the individual whys. So you
Mhm.
find out your why.
Mhm.
And then with teams, what we do is we send out the why test to everyone at once, and they take it at the same time. And then everyone gets their why. And then we go through all the different whys together. And then everyone talks about, for instance, you and I could both have challenge as our why, but our how and our what's could be different. So like my partner is challenged, but he loves IT. Whereas you get me near technology and I'm like, no, no, thank you.
Wow.
So we manifest them differently. So we can have similar whys, but here's the thing. You want people with diverse whys on a
Yes.
team.
Yeah.
You don't want all the same.
No,
You
you're going to have blind spots.
right.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that happens with entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs are predominantly challenge and better way people, right? They are always looking for, they're putting up a mark, something in the market that hasn't been there before, and they're creatives. But you also have to have someone in there to make it happen. So either a simplified person or a right way person to manifest it and make it happen. Because someone who's always the visionary, they're always looking for something new. And the problem is that it's like when you buy a computer and then you walk out of the store and it's now obsolete because the next technology is
Yeah.
coming up. Better way people think like that. And so they're always improving and they have trouble actually, like, when do you, it was like with my book, when do you say stop? When do you push go and let it just happen? And there's a lot of ruminating with those with visionaries. So you always want to have other people who are going to help keep you in check, move you forward. We need those people.
Yeah. It's so
And
important. Yeah. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
It's so important to know what you're good at and also know what you're not good at, because if you try, if you're not willing to look at that, then you are going to make a lot of mistakes and drag everybody into that mess, especially as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a in
Right.
the management level. So it's essential, it's a responsibility towards ourselves to have, it's out of question for me, um on a personal level and on a professional level, to have at least one mentor. And finding
Yes.
that mentor is always the challenge. Is how do I find, first of all, you want a really good mentor, and then the question is, how prepared are you actually also to have a good mentor? Like, how do you keep a mentor? Some
Well,
people just trash their mentors. They're
well,
like,
here's what happens with mentors, and it's happened with me in my life. And I'm going to be brutally honest here. You always attract a mentor who's going to meet you where you're at. Okay? And I'm going to say that again. You will attract a mentor who will meet you where you're at. And so what happened with me, with several of them, was, okay, so I meet a mentor and they're working with me and I get here and all of a sudden friction starts to happen.
mhm,
And now I start to do this. And now it's a bad situation.
yeah,
Because when you have someone who you're mentoring, who's mentoring you, and now you rise above them and they don't say to you, you are now ready to fly.
I've experienced
And
it
and
before.
they try to control you. So this is what's really important about finding a good mentor who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many times I'll get someone in and I'll be working with them, and I do this all the time. Where you're at and I have someone who I refer to because I feel like you're having a crisis on a different level that's above my pay grade here. I send them to this other person, let them deal with that part, and then they'll come back.
Mhm.
Because I like the working hand in hand, because I'm not a be all end all for everyone. I'm a mindset coach. I love business and I help people with some business decisions. I helped someone leave a family business who they said that I helped them work their way out of a 7-figure job for life. Left, started another business, and ended up selling it for almost $1 billion 7 years later. Yeah,
Wow.
it was incredible. It was when someone's really unhappy with who they are, and when they need to find out who they were. Now, this was a C-suite exec who was open to doing the spiritual work as well as the business work and the mindset work. And so it was a combination of all of that I offer, is that who are you as a human being and what do you want? Because people feel trapped in jobs because of the money. What they don't realize is that there's no loyalty there. And when you're not meant to be there anymore, the universe is going to find a way to get you out of there. People think that they're in control, and they're not, because when they're not in the position they're meant to be, the other thing that happens is when you know your why and your purpose, you don't get promoted into mediocrity. And what I mean by that is, let's say you work for me and you are one of the best salespeople I've ever had. You're freaking amazing and your numbers are off the charts. So now it's time for me to promote you. So I promote you into a managerial position where you're now babysitting other salespeople, right? You're managing them. Mm-hmm. And you think of it as babysitting because you can't stand that, because you want to be out in the world, and you want to meet new people. You don't want to be managing people. You want to go meet. So knowing that, or putting someone in a cubicle when they don't, or taking someone who's an engineer and now making them go out and do sales.
Oh,
just because they're really good at one job doesn't mean they're good at another. Yeah. So when you know your why, the company can promote from their strengths, knowing who they are, and then they can retain them. Because once you put someone in a position where they're not good, I was just talking to a client last week who's an engineer. He's a right way person, and because it's a small company, he has to do sales. And he said, I'm really uncomfortable at it, and there are other people who are better at it. And he said, I'm willing to do it because I have to. It's a small company. But he knows now why he's uncomfortable at it. It's just not what he's good at. So if he has a choice, let some of the other people who are better with people do it. And when you know that about the people in your company, the company will rise, because it also is where you gain your energy from. Mm-hmm. If I'm doing things that are different and better and make sense, and I'm doing what I love, I've been working 10, 12, 14-hour days for the past 5 months. And that's not normal for me, but I hit a stride where I had energy for it to go. And I would finish at 11 o'clock at night, and I'd be like, where's the next thing? And I have to make myself go to bed.
Yes.
It's like the Energizer Bunny. Mm-hmm. But that's when you know that you're in your purpose and your why.
Yes.
Yes. So the why has been essential. Getting people. How many times do we have bosses that are miserable, and they project all their misery onto other people?
Oh, they're destructive.
They're very destructive. Yeah, so they're playing out their childhood wounds on their employees. Mm-hmm. It's a lose-lose situation for everyone. Yeah. But if you get those executives who are making life miserable and people are quitting left and right, and you get them to heal that wound. People's wounds are their greatest gifts. When they heal that, you see this swing that happens, and then they have joy in their life, and then they have people who can't wait to come to work, because they don't need to take their unresolved problems and projecting it on everyone around them.
Yes, the suffering stops. And that's so beautiful. And if you think about how many families, it is a company, a family, a couple, same situation.
Well, and that's it. And when you find out that your partner, what their why is, because here's something that I also learned. Everyone thinks like they do. Everyone thinks that everyone sees the world through the same eyes, and that's not the case. So when you discover that I see the world through one lens, for instance, I had a client who was challenged. She was in a job. She's like, I hate my job. I'm miserable. I've been so miserable. She stopped taking care of herself. She had let her hair go. She had no makeup on. She was wearing drab clothing. She looked 20 years older than she was. And the first thing we did was the why test. And I said, you're a challenge person, and you're in a right way job. First of all, misery. So second, I said, we talked about taking better physical care of herself. And that was part of a huge shift and change for her. And then we realized that her husband was also right way.
Oh,
So
wow.
there was a misunderstanding in communication. So when she understood that, they better understood each other and understood that there were strengths, not that they were trying to get at each other and irritating each other for a reason.
That's so beautiful, because then we can actually start to appreciate or reestablish appreciation and respect for one another, because we know that it's their strength and it's not going against us. It's just their strength is different than ours. And
Exactly.
and then we can both orient towards one goal, and everybody's doing what they're best at, and then we meet where we appreciate each other and where we benefit each other.
Exactly.
Because then if the other person has strengths I don't have, that's amazing. Together we're stronger. But when it's oriented, like when when you're confronted with the differences versus, you orient towards, okay, let's orient towards a common goal in a company, in a couple, or whatever.
Right.
Then I think then that's where magic can happen, or wonders happen.
It does. And
Oh,
and
yeah.
the other thing that I had, I think I talked to you about this earlier, was that Greg Braden was saying how we have these cells that our brain creates, and our heart produces similar cells. They are brain cells, but they're from the heart. So when we have things that happen to us and we're struggling with any kind of trauma or anything that's happening, if we're only dealing it from a cognitive state, we've left out our hearts. We've left out the place where our feelings are, our soul resides, and we haven't healed that. So that's why people can stay in therapy for years, or when people are only dealing with something on a cognitive level. But if they can go in and then get to the root cause and heal it from this place, now you're golden.
That means that you could be in therapy forever and it's not really going to help, right?
Well, it doesn't say that it's not going to help, because I've been in therapy myself, but I find that therapy gives you coping mechanisms, right? How to deal with your anxiety, how to deal with your stress. But what about eliminating it?
Yeah. Going
You
to the
know,
source. Yeah.
going to the root
Healing the
cause and
source.
the source. Now, the source may be you've inherited it from an ancestor.
Mhm.
They've actually done studies where there's the science called epigenetics, where they
Mhm.
can actually take mice and they shocked them every time they smelled a particular smell. And then what happened was those mice, their grandchildren, their grandpups, every time they got near that smell, they would run without being
No way.
shocked.
So,
Yeah.
I guess we call that cell memory
Yeah,
or
it gets
something.
passed down. It's
Yeah.
cellular memory that gets passed down generation to generation.
I think,
It's survival.
I don't know if Dr. Bruce Lipton was talking about this, but I know that Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, and then there's like they call themselves the Three Amigos. I forgot his name.
Is it
They
Joe
both
Vitale?
know
No.
Greg Braden, Dr. Bruce Lipton. The oh Dr. Joe Dispenza, I think.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, yeah. So they both, but between the three of them, I think I've heard this something similar before, where the thing is though that it manifests into the cells, not in form of a DNA problem, but on our DNA strands we have like switches. And so the switches get inherited, which ones are on and off. And so that's what
It
we call, yes.
Yeah, it's how the DNA is expressed. So
Exactly. Yes.
it's not changing your DNA, it's the expression of your DNA.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what happens is now a switch gets turned on 5 generations back. You see patterns in your family where you see certain behaviors or certain belief systems that are patterns in the family, and you're like, why is my whole family doing the same thing? When you go back, and you can go back through hypnosis up through the DNA to the root cause, the ancestor, we do a releasing and a healing and forgiveness, because forgiveness is everything. And then we go to the next generation and healing, letting go, forgiveness, and then the next generation. And it's extraordinary. And it's one of the things that I've done with people with weight issues, because I've had people come to me who have not been able to lose weight. They lose it and then they go back, and we'll do the timeline work. We'll talk to their saboteur, the part of them that undermines them. We'll do all of this investigative work. And then I'm like, is there weight issues in your family? Oh, yeah. Did you have family members that experienced the depression? Was that a big issue? Oh, yeah. And then they start talking about the Clean Plate Club that came down several generations, and that they're eating and they don't even know why. So when you clear that up, you can clear it energetically and stop it from passing down to the next generation. But now you've been programmed at a different level, so then you have to work on that programming. But when you release it from your DNA, it stops it from reoccurring. You can get to that end result without bouncing back. Does that make sense?
Yes, I've experienced this work before. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as normal for me, I'd say.
Right.
I've literally seen miracles happen in my life and in the lives of other people who've experienced this as well. And it's something where you're like, well, I've inherited this sickness. Yeah, it's true. It doesn't mean you have to live with it, and you don't have to inherit it to your children. So you can
Exactly.
stop. You can flip the switch, and that's it's amazing. It can change your whole life, and change the life of your children. I had one friend of mine, she's a healer in Germany, and she said, you have an influence on your children's, let's call it switches, until they're grown up. So basically, if you do work on yourself without working on your children, you are actually working on your children. So without consciously. So it's like when you shift, you can basically shift a lot in your family, and sometimes more than you expect, but you definitely influence your children. So if there's anything with your children that I think she said, when you experience any sort of misalignment that your children are experiencing, look at yourself and figure out where is it that you can work on yourself, and you don't have to do anything with your children. And they're so what would the right word be? They're so open still in their system that your healing has an immediate effect and heals them as well. I think that's so beautiful.
And I will say, they don't have to be living with you for that to happen.
Exactly. It doesn't
I
matter where
just
they are.
had, my children are 29 children. My children are 29 and 32.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a miracle happen in my life around the fact that I did some major forgiveness work around something that changed the whole family dynamic.
Wow.
Miracles happen.
Yes.
And that's when I see like the synchronicities happening, when we create our own reality. So when I believed that I had nothing to offer and that I wasn't smart, that was my reality. As I started to peel that onion away and started looking at from a soul level, and it's body, mind, spirit. You can't just be on one plane. You can work on your physical body. That's important because that keeps things going, and helps you feel better in your body, helps you be grounded. But you have to work on the mental, emotional, and the spiritual part of you to truly feel like have a better understanding of your purpose. And that's why I've studied, all of them. Am I a fitness trainer? No, that's not where my expertise is. But have I learned how to eat properly and take care of myself? Yes, that can be a little bit of part of the work that I do. I do a lot of weight loss work as well. There are things that I can't say because I'm not a licensed mental health practitioner, but there's anecdotal experiences of people who have had really life-changing, life-altering experiences from this work, because they connect to them. They connect to who they are at a deeper level. And here's the thing. You don't have to make those changes right away. But once you have the wisdom, you can integrate it whenever you want. I'm not here to pull the rug out from under people. I'm just here to say, here's potential. Here's what your soul is calling from for you. You have free will. It's your decision. What do you want to do with this? And there are people who aren't ready, and there are people who are. And I love working with the people who are ready, because you can really make some major changes in a short period of time.
Yes. Well, you actually, in my experience, some people want to be ready. They are not yet.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. Um, wow. I'm, um, I'd like to ask you on like your personal opinion about, um, just making a shift toward back to being like professional topics, which would be find your mentor. And what would you like to see in a platform, and how it could serve you best in what you do?
One
Big
of the
question.
hardest, yeah, one, it is, the answer just literally popped into my head, because one of the things that I love about Find Your Mentor is I love doing what I do. It's a lot of work to get clients, because I have to spend a lot of time on sales and marketing, which takes me away from the time I need to work with clients, because my work happens so quickly. Oftentimes within weeks or a few months, people can shift very quickly. And so I'm always in a position where I'm having to market myself a lot to get new clients. So to be on a platform that can make that easier for me so that I can see more clients and help more people is a godsend. And I think that's true for most mentors and people. We're all good at different things. And hallelujah to people who love sales and marketing. I've done it. Am I great at it? Maybe sometimes, but and I love meeting people, and I'm a connector, and that's what I'm really good at. But when it comes to what you do and offering the sales and marketing and the platform and connecting people who are really right for each other, for instance, I'm not for everyone, right? Someone who's a banker who doesn't want to talk about their feelings is not going to want to work with me.
Yeah.
But someone who has an open mind and doesn't mind stepping out of things that are a little unique and outside the box, that's someone who is going to have so much, we will have so much fun together. They're going to even forget that they're working on themselves, because we're just going to be having a ball, helping
Yes,
them step
it's
into
finding the
them.
right, it's finding the right mentor. You were describing before when you said like when a mentee, we call them finders, is here, and then you have the mentor who, like, the mentee rises to the level of the mentor. I think that a lot of mentors is basically everybody that has something to teach
Mhm.
could get stuck here, is because um, they're the coaches are so busy with marketing and sales and all these things that they don't have the capacity and time they need to be able to rise so they can keep on pulling their mentees up. So if they can do that, like um then that would, I think, absolutely optimize the relationships, or help the mentors develop themselves, because I see two things are essentially important for the mentors. And I'd love if you, I don't know how you, if you'd add anything to it, but it's the personal development of the mentor, and then the helping mentees, which
The
is the most
personal
important thing.
development of the mentor is essential. And I always say my clients are my greatest teachers, because they're always showing me where I can better myself, and also dropping the ego. Because if I think I'm the best person out there and that, I know everything, then I'm in trouble, because I don't. I do the best I can with what I have. I've studied an enormous amount over the past 20 years, and I know I'm really good at what I do. But when I'm over my head with someone and I know that I can't offer something, there's a great resource here where I can say, you know what, here's someone else who I think would be a better fit for you.
Mhm.
Because the last thing you want to do is try and hold on to someone because you're afraid to let them go. And so as a mentor and a mentee, and a finder, you've got this resource where people can feel free to say, I'm not afraid to let someone go because someone else is going to rise
There's
someone
enough
else's name.
resources. Yes.
There's
Yeah.
enough resources where someone else is working with someone else and say, oh, Lisa has some things, skill sets that I think you could use. And that frees them up to help other people. So
Yes.
it's this kind of, way of helping. And that's really how business is going to be done in the future, because there is no such thing as scarcity. There is enough for everyone. There always is. It's
It's a
just, yeah,
not a zero sum game anymore, right?
right.
Yes. I'd love to talk to you about business, by the way. I think that's probably a separate conversation though, versus this one.
Right, right. Well, we've covered a lot of things. The one thing, the other thing is I can also give advice on writing a book, because I just put myself through 9 months of this, and I want to show everyone.
Yes, please. Please show your book. It's just
So
a
I
little
don't know if you can
closer.
see.
Yes.
It's called "In Every Belief Is a Lie," and my
A
dear
guide.
friend Barry took the photo of me here. So it's a guide to exposing what controls your life and claiming your undisputed truth. So this is all about techniques and ways that you can figure out. It's a lot of self-help. There's a lot of tools in here. There's a lot of questions and exercises to help you do your own work.
I'll
So
link
you
the
can,
book below. If you send me the link, then I can add that below so people can find the book.
yeah, it's available on Amazon, and there's a QR code that you can click on, and it takes you to a couple meditations as well. And I'm in the process of recording the Audible book right now, but it's been a great tool to help people, so that they can really learn to help themselves. And it's been a labor of love. It's got a lot of personal stories, a lot of tears in there, and a lot of joy. It was 10 years in the making, and I had to do a lot of self-reflection and a lot of work in order to get this out. And I will say it's one of my greatest achievements,
Well,
scariest and greatest achievements.
I love
Besides,
that because so many things in my life have helped me, not only people. Sometimes it's also just been a book, or sometimes it's even the lyrics in a song or a movie. But books are so powerful, and so that's why on Find Your Mentor, books are also considered mentors, because they're guides too. So I'm definitely gonna want your QR code so I can post that as well, so people can find the meditations and learn more about you and contact you. I'd love that.
oh, that's awesome.
Well,
That's awesome.
Lisa, I can't wait for our next conversation, because I'd love to go deeper with you in terms of business. That's something where I feel like there's also a lot to learn and to exchange, because I believe that we're going into a new era, also rethinking companies. It's desperately needed. And that what you said at the beginning with my sense of service, um, is the balance in economy between the give and the take. It needs to be a win-win on both sides. And that's what we've also experienced in big tech, in big government, and big basically big everything. It's become a lopsided and not in favor of humans, sadly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have to come back to a balance. But what does that mean, and how can we learn? Because at the end of the day, anything that is beneficial for all parties or when we bring things back into balance, that's where healing occurs. And then
No,
we'll bring the economy also back into balance.
you're so right. And a huge part of it is ethics. We talked about it, the ethical way of doing business. And sometimes, when you go for the quick buck, it's a short-term gain, right? But when you nurture your employees and you encourage them and treat them with respect, and have ethical business practices, it changes everything, because trust is everything. And Simon Sinek did this. I saw this on social media recently, where he did this chart. You have the y-axis and the x-axis, and this is productivity, and this is trust. And he talked about how he interviewed the Navy SEALs, and how they work. And they said,
I
no
saw
one,
that.
yeah, no one wants the low productivity and low trust.
Mhm.
And then you see in business, you have these people who are high productivity, low trust, and they're the bosses that no one wants to work for. And they said they'd rather the best leaders are always high trust, and they can even be medium productivity. Because when people trust, they'll bend over backwards for that person, and they make tremendous leaders. And so what people have to understand is the more ethical they are as bosses, as companies that people can trust, the more they're going to grow. And there's all kinds of data that shows that companies are much more profitable over time when they're ethical.
Yeah. Wow. That's kind of like there's this like this I can feel like this energetic echo, from what you just said.
The mic drop.
Resonation. Yeah. Oh, it's something we can we all have something to teach, and we all have something to learn, all of us, not just the mentors, not just the mentees. We're all both, actually. It's just about that activation. And I think we're all we start off as finders, and then we can develop into mentors, but we have to really be careful to never forget that we're always finders. Always.
We are always, yes.
Yeah.
And that's the key with being a mentor, is that you never have to stop learning. There's always something to grow and stretch. Information changes. There's always new ways. And having a platform like this allows you to learn from other people. So, we're all mentors and finders. We're not just
Yes,
one.
otherwise the finders will surpass you at one point, and then
Exactly.
you're basically left as a finder again anyway.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
and you know what? I when I learn that someone else has a great skill that I don't have, I love connecting.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
just a
like,
beautiful
I
thing.
want to learn more. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, learning is fun. Well, I know, Lisa, that you have like you're so busy. I know you have another um um something to get to.
Yes.
So I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for giving me some of your valuable time, and also sharing with everybody who you are. I will, as soon as I have your link, I'll be able to share this video. Can't wait.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, until next time.